A Short System of English Grammar, for the use of the Boarding School in Worcester, by Henry Bate, Artium Baccalaureus. Recording by Corrie Samuel. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. The Preface. Usage and custom are the rules and measures of every language, and the rules of grammar have nothing more to do than to teach it. The grammar is to be fashioned from the particular language it treats of, and not the language from the grammar. For want of following this regular plan, our modern grammarians have introduced the grammar rules of other languages into their own, as if all language was founded on grammar, and the rules in one language would serve the same end and purpose in another. The Latin, for instance, has only 8 parts of speech, and the writers of English grammar have unthinkingly adopted the same number, whereas with the article, which the Latin has not, and which is of great service in a language, we have no less than 9. The Latin admits of cases, but as different cases, properly speaking, are nothing more than the different inflections and terminations of nouns, English nouns have no cases. It is not agreeable to the principles of grammar to say that of a rose is the genitive case of rose, or to a rose, the dative, for of and to are no part of the word rose, but only prefix particles or prepositions, which show the different relation of the word rose. So likewise when we say Alexander's horse, the word Alexander's is not the genitive case of Alexander. For strictly speaking the S is no part of the word Alexander, but the final letter of the pronoun possessive, his, and without the apostrophe we should read it thus, Alexander his horse. If any of the parts of speech have cases, the pronouns have, and some of the pronouns may perhaps have too, but for the sake of making everything as easy as I can to the learner, I have taken the liberty of distinguishing such pronouns into prefix and subsequent, and entirely laid aside cases as useless and unnecessary. The Latin has genders, the adjective in that language always varying to correspond with the substantive, but our adjectives never vary, and therefore the distinction of genders has nothing to do with English grammar, but is idle, trifling, impertinent. Experience shows that this sort of pedantic ignorance and folly has made that dark and obscure which it was intended to elucidate, and unhappily puzzled and perplexed a great many more than it has ever instructed. Every attempt to make English easy must be fruitless that is not formed upon a different plan, and such is the following short system of English grammar. Of grammar and its divisions. Grammar is the science of letters or language, and is the art of speaking and writing properly. Its divisions are 4: orthography, analogy, prosody, syntax. Of orthography. Orthography comprehends writing and articulation. Articulation treats of simple sounds, which are made by the organs of speech, and by which we communicate our ideas and sentiments to one another. Writing represents the living speech, and makes, as it were, these sounds and sentiments visible. Of prosody. Prosody treats of pronunciation with respect of accent, time, and quantity, but as the science of letters, sounds, and pronunciation is instilled into the minds of the English youth very early in life, and, as this grammar is not intended for the use of foreigners, but for them, I shall not trifle away their time in teaching them what they cannot be supposed to be unacquainted with, but proceed to the third part of grammar, called analogy. Of analogy. Analogy is the mutual relation or agreement of words with one another, and treats of all the parts of speech, which in English are 9. Article, verb, conjunction, noun, participle, preposition, pronoun, adverb, interjection. Of an article. An article is a part of speech put before nouns to ascertain and fix their vague signification. There are 3 articles, a, an, and the. A and an are indefinite articles, and applied to persons or things indifferently, as an oyster, a prince. The article the distinguishes individually or particularly, as the oyster, the prince. Of a noun. A noun is a part of speech which expresses the subject spoke of, as ink, paper, witness. A noun is either substantive or adjective. A noun substantive is the name of a thing considered simply in itself and without any regard to its qualities, as a man, a woman, a child. A noun adjective is a word added to the noun substantive, expressing the circumstance or quality thereof, as a good man, an old woman, a young child. Of a pronoun. A pronoun is a part of speech substituted in the place of a noun to avoid the frequent and disagreeable repetition of the same word, as the bird is joyous, he chirps, he sings, which without the pronoun would be thus: the bird is joyous, the bird chirps, the bird sings. Pronouns personal. I, he, myself, I myself, me, him, yourself, you yourself, you, she, thyself, thou thyself, thou, her, himself, he himself, thee, one's self, herself, she herself. Pronouns relative. Who, whose, whom, what, which. Pronouns demonstrative. This, that. Pronouns possessive. My, ours, your, theirs, mine, thy, yours, her, our, thine, his, hers. Of number. Number expresses the difference betwixt one thing and many, and is either singular or plural. When a thing is considered as single, or a multitude of things considered as united together, it is of the singular number, as a man, a troop. When several things are considered as distinct from each other, it is of the plural number, as men, soldiers. The plural is usually formed in noun substantives by adding s to the singular, as article, articles, noun, nouns. But when the pronunciation requires it, or when the singular ends in s, x, sh, or ch, the plural is usually formed by adding the syllable es, as ass, asses, fox, foxes, sash, sashes, church, churches. When the singular ends in f or fe, the plural is usually formed by changing the f or fe into ves, as wife, wives, self, selves. Sometimes the plural is formed by adding the syllable en, as ox, oxen. Sometimes by changing the vowel, as man, men. And sometimes the vowels and consonants, as penny, pence, mouse, mice, louse, lice. Some of the pronouns form their plural very irregular, as I, we, me, us, thou, ye, thee, you, he, they, him, them, she, they, her, them. Some nouns have no singular number, as scissors, the East Indies, the West Indies. Some have no plural, the names of kingdoms, for instance, as England, Ireland, Portugal. Cities, towns and villages, such as Worcester, Kinver, Hagley. Seas and rivers, as the Mediterranean, Severn. Wheat, barley, gold, silver, pewter, and a great many words that cannot be reduced to any rule want the plural number, as ale, beer, bread, butter, honey, milk, hunger, thirst, drunkenness. The termination of some nouns is the same both in the singular and plural, as a sheep, a swine, a flock of sheep, a herd of swine, etc. Of comparison. Comparison is the comparing the different circumstances of persons or things with each other, and serves to alter the signification of a word either by a gradual increase or a gradual diminution, as long, longer, longest, short, shorter, shortest. Adjectives, adverbs, and substantives have 3 degrees of comparison: the positive, the comparative, and the superlative. The positive lays down the natural signification simply and without excess or diminution, as long, short, often. The comparative raises or lowers the positive in signification, and is formed of the positive by adding the syllable er, as long, longer, short, shorter, often, oftener. The superlative raises or lowers the signification as much as possible, and is formed of the positive by adding the syllable est, as long, longest, short, shortest, often, oftenest. Sometimes they are compared by the adverbs very, infinitely, and the adjectives more, most, less, least, as long, very long, infinitely long, short, more short, most short, commonly, less commonly, least commonly. These adjectives deviate from the general rule: good, better, best, bad, worse, worst, little, less, least, much, more, most. Substantives are compared by the adjectives more, most, the words than or that always following, as a dunce, more a dunce than I or me, the most a dunce that ever I did see. Of a verb. A verb is a part of speech which serves to express what we affirm of or attribute to any subject, and is either active or passive. A verb active is that which expresses an action, as I kick, I see. A verb passive is that which receives the action or expresses the passion, as I am kicked, I am seen. A verb has 2 numbers, the singular and the plural, and 3 persons in each number, as I am, thou art, he is, we are, ye are, they are. The same is to be observed in every mood and in every tense, but in the infinitive, which has neither number nor person. Of moods. A mood is the manner of conjugating verbs agreeably to the different actions or affections to be expressed. There are 4 moods: the indicative, the imperative, the conjunctive, and the infinitive. The indicative mood expresseth the action or passion simply, directly, and absolutely, as I love, I have loved, I will love. The imperative commands or forbids, as come, go, be gone. The conjunctive expresses the action or passion conditionally, and is always joined with the indicative or the same mood, as I will love you if you would love me, I would dance if you would dance. The infinitive expresses the action or passion indeterminately, without any regard to time, place, number, or person, as to love, to be loved. Of the tenses. Tense is an inflection of verbs, whereby they are made to signify and distinguish the circumstance of time. There are 5 tenses: the present tense, the preterimperfect, the preterperfect, the preterpluperfect, and the future. 1. The present tense expresses the time that now is, as I sup. 2. The preterimperfect tense denotes the historical relation of a past action, but yet not perfectly completed, when joined to another action that is perfectly completed, as when or while I supped, he came in. 3. The preterperfect tense expresses the time past perfectly, as I have supped. 4. The preterpluperfect tense expresses the time past doubly, as I had supped. 5. The future tense expresses the time to come, as I shall sup, I will sup. Of the conjugation. Conjugation is the variation of verbs through all their moods and tenses, and the English verbs are chiefly conjugated by auxiliary signs, as to love, or by auxiliary verbs, as I am loved, I have loved. Of the auxiliary signs. The auxiliary signs are words that serve to express the variations of the verb. The imperative mood has the signs do, let, as do thou love, let him love. The infinitive mood has the signs to, about, as to love, about to love. The other moods have the auxiliary signs following: singular, first person, I do, did, must, may, can, might, would, could, should, shall, or will. Second person, thou dost, didst, must, mayst, canst, mightst, wouldst, couldst, shouldst, shalt, or wilt. Third person, he does, or doth, did, must, may, can, might, would, could, should, shall, or will. Plural. First person, we do, did, must, may, can, might, would, could, should, shall, or will. Second person, ye do, did, must, may, can, might, would, could, should, shall, or will. Third person, they do, did, must, may, can, might, would, could, should, shall, or will. Of the auxiliary verbs. The auxiliary verbs are only two, to have and to be, which cannot be conjugated without the auxiliary signs and without the reciprocal assistance of each other. To have. Indicative mood. Present tense. Singular. I have, thou hast, he hath or has. Plural. We have, ye have, they have. Preterimperfect tense. Singular. I had, thou hadst, he had. Plural. We had, ye had, they had. Preterperfect tense. Singular. I have had, thou hast had, he hath or has had. Plural. We have had, ye have had, they have had. Preterpluperfect tense. Singular. I had had, thou hadst had, he had had. Plural. We had had, ye had had, they had had. Future tense. Singular. I shall or will have. Thou shalt or wilt have. He shall or will have. Plural. We shall or will have. Ye shall or will have. They shall or will have. Imperative mood. Present and future. Singular. Let me have. Do thou have or have thou. Let him have. Plural. Let us have. Do ye have or have ye. Let them have. Conjunctive mood. Present tense. Singular. I may or can have. Thou mayst or canst have. He may or can have. Plural. We may or can have. Ye may or can have. They may or can have. Preterimperfect tense. Singular. I must, might, would, could, or should have. Thou must, mightst, wouldst, couldst, or shouldst have. He must, might, would, could, or should have. Plural. We must, might, would, could, or should have. Ye must, might, would, could, or should have. They must, might, would, could, or should have. Preterperfect tense. Singular. I must, might, would, could, or should have had. Thou must, mightst, wouldst, couldst, or shouldst have had. He must, might, would, could, or should have had. Plural. We must, might, would, could, or should have had. Ye must, might, would, could, or should have had. They must, might, would, could, or should have had. Preterpluperfect tense. Singular. I must, might, would, could, or should have had. Thou must, mightst, wouldst, couldst, or shouldst have had. He must, might, would, could, or should have had. Plural. We must, might, would, could, or should have had. Ye must, might, would, could, or should have had. They must, might, would, could, or should have had. Future tense. Singular. I shall or will have had. Thou shalt or wilt have had. He shall or will have had. Plural. We shall or will have had. Ye shall or will have had. They shall or will have had. Infinitive mood. Present. to have. Perfect, to have had. Future, about to have. Participles. Present, having. Preterperfect, having had. To be. Indicative mood, present tense. Singular. I am, thou art, he is. Plural. We are, ye are, they are. Preterimperfect tense. Singular. I was, thou wast, he was. Plural. We were, ye were, they were. Preterperfect tense. Singular. I have been, thou hast been, he hath been. Plural. We have been, ye have been, they have been. Preterpluperfect tense. Singular. I had been, thou hadst been, he had been. Plural. We had been, ye had been, they had been. Future tense. Singular. I shall, or will be. Thou shalt, or wilt be. He shall, or will be. Plural. We shall, or will be. Ye shall, or will be. They shall, or will be. Imperative mood, present and future. Singular. Let me be. Do thou be, or be thou. Let him be. Plural. Let us be. Do ye be, or be ye. Let them be. Conjunctive mood, present tense. Singular. I may, or can be. Thou mayst, or canst be. He may, or can be. Plural. We may, or can be. Ye may, or can be. They may, or can be. Preterimperfect tense. Singular. I must, might, would, could, or should be. Thou must, mightst, wouldst, couldst, or shouldst be. He must, might, would, could, or should be. Plural. We must, might, would, could, or should be. Ye must, might, would, could, or should be. They must, might, would, could, or should be. Preterperfect tense. Singular. I must, might, would, could, or should have been. Thou must, mightst, wouldst, couldst, or shouldst have been. He must, might, would, could, or should have been. Plural. We must, might, would, could, or should have been. Ye must, might, would, could, or should have been. They must, might, would, could, or should have been. Preterpluperfect tense. Singular. I must, might, would, could, or should have had been. Thou must, mightst, wouldst, couldst, or shouldst have had been. He must, might, would, could, or should have had been. Plural. We must, might, would, could, or should have had been. Ye must, might, would, could, or should have had been. They must, might, would, could, or should have had been. Future tense. Singular. I shall, or will have been. Thou shalt, or wilt have been. He shall, or will have been. Plural. We shall, or will have been. Ye shall, or will have been. They shall, or will have been. Infinitive mood, present, to be, preterperfect, to have been, future, about to be. Participles: present, being, preterperfect, having been. Of regular verbs. Regular verbs are those that are conjugated by some established rules. The termination of the infinitive mood present tense of the verb active in regular verbs is always the same as the first person of the indicative mood present tense singular, as to love, I love. The termination of the second person singular is formed out of the first by adding st or est, as I love, thou lovest, I read, thou readest. The termination of the third person singular is formed out of the first by adding th or eth, as I love, he loveth, I read, he readeth. Or only by adding s, as he loves, he reads. The termination of the first person preterimperfect tense singular is formed out of the first person present tense singular by adding the syllable ed, as I love, I loved. The termination of the participle present of the verb active is always formed out of the first person present by adding the syllable ing, as I love, loving. The termination of the preterimperfect, the preterperfect, and the preterpluperfect of the indicative mood, and the preterperfect, the preterpluperfect, and the future of the conjunctive, and the participle passive, is in regular verbs the same, as I loved, I have loved, I had loved, I may have loved, I might have loved, I shall have loved, I am loved. And the termination of every other tense, number, or person is the same with the infinitive. Of a verb active. A verb active regular is conjugated by the auxiliary signs, the auxiliary verbs, and the general rules foregoing. To love, indicative mood, present tense, singular, I love or do love, thou lovest or dost love, he loveth or loves or doth love. Plural, we love or do love, ye love or do love, they love or do love. Preterimperfect tense, singular, I loved or did love, thou lovedst or didst love, he loved or did love. Plural, we loved or did love, ye loved or did love, they loved or did love. Preterperfect tense, singular, I have loved, thou hast loved, he hath loved or has loved. Plural, we have loved, ye have loved, they have loved. Preterpluperfect tense, singular, I had loved, thou hadst loved, he had loved. Plural, we had loved, ye had loved, they had loved. Future tense, singular, I shall or will love, thou shalt or wilt love, he shall or will love. Plural, we shall or will love, ye shall or will love, they shall or will love. Imperative mood, present and future, singular, let me love, do thou love or love thou, let him love. Plural, let us love, do ye love or love ye, let them love. Conjunctive mood, present tense, singular, I may or can love, thou mayst or canst love, He may or can love. Plural. We may or can love. Ye may or can love. They may or can love. Preterimperfect tense. Singular. I must, might, would, could, or should love. Thou must, mightst, wouldst, couldst, or shouldst love. He must, might, would, could, or should love. Plural. We must, might, would, could, or should love. Ye must, might, would, could, or should love. They must, might, would, could, or should love. Preterperfect tense. Singular. I must, might, would, could, or should have loved. Thou must, mightst, wouldst, couldst, or shouldst have loved. He must, might, would, could, or should have loved. Plural. We must, might, would, could, or should have loved. Ye must, might, would, could, or should have loved. They must, might, would, could, or should have loved. Preterpluperfect tense. Singular. I must, might, would, could, or should have had loved. Thou must, mightst, wouldst, couldst, or shouldst have had loved. He must, might, would, could, or should have had loved. Plural. We must, might, would, could, or should have had loved. Ye must, might, would, could, or should have had loved. They must, might, would, could, or should have had loved. Future tense. Singular. I shall or will have loved. Thou shalt or wilt have loved. He shall or will have loved. Plural. We shall or will have loved. Ye shall or will have loved. They shall or will have loved. Infinitive mood. Present. To love. Preterperfect. To have loved. Future. About to love. Participles. Present. Loving. Preterperfect. Having loved. Of a verb passive. The verb passive is nothing more than the participle passive joined to the auxiliary verb to be, as indicative mood, present tense, I am loved, etc. Preterimperfect, I was loved, etc. Preterperfect, I have been loved, etc. Preterpluperfect, I had been loved, etc. Future, I shall or will be loved, etc. Imperative mood, present and future, let me be loved, etc. Conjunctive mood, present tense, singular, I may or can be loved, thou, etc. Preterimperfect tense, singular, I must, might, would, could, or should be loved, thou, etc. Preterperfect tense, singular, I must, might, would, could, or should have been loved, thou, etc. Preterpluperfect tense, singular, I must, might, would, could, or should have had been loved, thou, etc. Future tense, singular, I shall or will have been loved, thou, etc. Infinitive mood, present, to be loved. Preterperfect, to have been loved. Future, about to be loved. Participles, present, being loved. Preterperfect, having been loved. Of a participle. A participle is a part of speech which partaketh of a verb and a noun. When it has a relation to time, it may be considered as a verb, but when it is joined to a substantive, or admits of comparison, it may be considered as an adjective. When the termination of the participle passive is not formed by adding the syllable ed to the first person of the indicative mood present tense singular, or when the termination of the participle passive differs from the termination of the pretertenses, the verb becomes irregular, but in all other respects is conjugated as the regular verb, as I abide, thou abidest, etc. Present tense, preter, participle passive. Abide, abode, abode. Bite, bit, bitten. Catch, caught, catched. Do, did, done. Eat, eat, eaten. Fall, fell, fallen. Get, got, gotten. Hold, held, holden. Know, knew, known. Lie, lay, laid. Make, made, made. Rise, rose, risen. Shine, shone, shined. Tread, trod, trodden. Weave, wove, woven, etc. To these may be added the auxiliary verbs to have and to be. Of an adverb. An adverb is part of speech joined to a verb, a noun substantive, an adjective or participle, and sometimes to another adverb, to express the manner or circumstance of the thing signified, as he speaks properly, an orderly man, truly good, extremely loving, very devoutly. Adverbs are very numerous, and have relation to time, as now, lately, always. Place, as here, there, nowhere. Order, as by turns, abreast, orderly. Quantity, as enough, more, entirely. Number, as once, twice, thrice. Doubting, as perhaps, maybe, peradventure. Asking, as why, whence, wherefore. Affirmation, as yes, indeed, certainly. Negation, as no, never, not at all. Comparison, as more, less, likewise. Quality, as justly, prudently, indifferently. Of a conjunction. A conjunction is a part of speech which serves to connect and join the several parts of a discourse together, and is of various kinds. Copulative, as and, also, moreover. Disjunctive, as or, neither, whether. Adversative, as but, yet, notwithstanding. Conditional, as if, unless, provided. Casual, as for, because, forasmuch. Conclusive, as then, so that, therefore. Of a preposition. A preposition is a part of speech that serves to express the particular relation and circumstance of some other part of speech, and is either used in apposition, as in heaven, or in composition, as invisible. Prepositions used in apposition. Above, about, after, against, among, amongst, at, before, behind, beneath, below, beside, between, betwixt, beyond, by, for, from, in, into, near, near to, nigh, nigh to, of, on, over, through, throughout, towards, under, unto, upon, with, within, without. Prepositions used in composition: abase, abuse, abstract, accommodate, adapt, affix, afternoon, amphitheatre, antedate, antichrist, anarchy, appoint, ascertain, attaint, befriend, circumambient, coadjutor, compound, complot, constrain, contradiction, counterbalance, decamp, disappoint, diffusive, diminish, emission, embrace, enclose, essay, exterminate, extraordinary, forbear, foresee, imperfect, inglorious, interview, introduction, obnoxious, offspring, oppression, overreach, outlandish, perform, postmaster, preeminence, preternatural, prolong, regain, retrograde, subjoin, superfine, transmigration, unworthy, underwritten, upright, withdraw, etc., etc., etc. Of an interjection. An interjection is a part of speech that serves to express some sudden motion or passion of the mind, transported with a sensation of pleasure or pain. Of pleasure, as "O brave! O heavens! O joy!" Of pain, as "Alas! O my God! O Lord!" Interjections of a lower order. Of caution, as "Hold! Take care!" Of admiration, as "See! Look! Behold!" Of aversion, as "Fie! Away, you fool!" Of silence, as "Be still! Silence!" Of syntax. Syntax is the manner of constructing one word with another prescribed by the rules of grammar. Rule first. The article a is usually placed before a word that begins with a consonant, the article an before a word that begins with a vowel, and either a or an before a word that begins with an h, and the article the before a word that begins with either a vowel or a consonant, as a Christian, an infidel, a heathen or an heathen, the Christian, the infidel, the heathen. Rule second. A noun substantive is usually placed after its noun adjective, as the second chapter, a great man, but sometimes for the sake of greater distinction the adjective is placed after, with the article the before it, as George II, Peter the Great. In poetry, the adjective is placed either before or after its substantive indifferently, as the versification requires it. Rule third. All nouns and pronouns are of the third person, except I and we, which are of the first person, and thou, you, and ye, which are of the second person, and except the relative pronouns, which are always of the same person, with the personal pronoun to which they relate, as I love, thou lovest, he loveth, I who love, thou who lovest, he who loveth. Rule 4th. The prefix pronouns I, we, thou, you, ye, he, she, they, who are usually placed before the verb, and the subsequent pronouns me, us, thee, him, her, them, whom are usually placed after, as I love the dog loves me. But when a question is asked, or when the verb is of the imperative mood, or in short sentences, the prefix pronouns are usually placed afterwards, as lovest thou me? Love thou thyself, said he, said they. Rule 5th. When a question is asked and the verb has an auxiliary sign, or an auxiliary verb, the governing noun or pronoun is placed immediately after such auxiliary, as does the sun shine? Has he washed his hands? And when the verb has two or more auxiliaries, the noun or pronoun is placed after the first, as have I been taught? Could the truth have been known? Rule 6th. The verb agrees with its governing noun, pronoun personal, or pronoun relative, in number and person, as the birds sing, thou lovest, he who loveth. Rule 7th. A noun of multitude may have a verb either singular or plural, as the people is mad, or the people are mad. But if a substantive of the same signification follows, that is not a noun of multitude, then the verb is always plural, as we do not say, the people is a mad man, but the people are mad men. Rule 8th. Two or more nouns or pronouns singular will have a verb plural, as the dog and cat are very loving. But when two or more substantives singular signify the same thing or person, or when the preposition of intervenes, the verb is always singular, as the river Severn is navigable, William the Conqueror was a great man. This system of grammar is compendious. Rule 9th. The subsequent pronouns are usually placed after prepositions and interjections, as of me, to us, for thee, with her, from them, against whom, O me. Of the points or pauses. The points or pauses have a sort of musical proportion. The period is marked thus, dot symbol. Its time is equal to 2 colons, and is never placed but at the end of a sentence, the sense of which is perfect and complete, as by me kings reign and princes decree justice. The colon is marked thus, colon symbol. Its time is equal to 2 semicolons, and is placed where the sense seems to be perfect and complete, but to which notwithstanding something may still be added, as give instruction to a wise man and he will be yet wiser, teach a just man and he will increase in learning. The semicolon is marked thus, semicolon symbol. Its time is equal to 2 commas, and is placed where the sense is less complete than the colon and more complete than the comma, as a wise man's heart is at his right hand, but a fool's heart is at his left. The comma is marked thus, comma symbol. It is the last and least pause or time that is made use of, and serves to distinguish the simple numbers of a period, as arise, my friend, and come away. Of the other notes or characters. A note of interrogation (?) symbol is used when a question is asked, as who comes there? A note of admiration exclamation mark symbol, is used after interjections or short sentences to express our wonder and surprise, as "Oh! Oh Lord!" A parenthesis (bracket, rarely made use of by a good writer) close bracket, is used to enclose one sentence within another. The paragraph is marked thus paragraph symbol, and denotes the beginning of a new discourse. An apostrophe is used when some part of a word is left out, as Alexander's horse for Alexander his horse. A hyphen is used to join together two words, as footstool, etc., and is used also when part of a word is written in one line and part in another. The caret is marked thus caret symbol, to show whether words in any sentence that are left out should come in, as the lady is beautiful. The subdivision or part of a chapter is marked usually thus symbol. The index points to some remarkable passage thus symbol, index finger pointing to the right. A quotation is a double comma, reverse and set against some lines on the left side of a page to show that they are quoted from another author, thus quote symbol. The notes that refer to the margin are an asterisk made thus asterisk symbol, an obelisk thus dagger symbol, also thus double line symbol. Besides these there are literal characters, numeral characters, and abbreviations, the knowledge of which is not so easily to be acquired by grammar rules as by diligent observation and experience. End of A Short System of English Grammar by Henry Bate. Recording by Corrie Samuel.